Ever been caught in that, that magnetic pull towards someone, that feeling where they sort of occupy your thoughts almost rent-free?
Oh, absolutely. It's powerful.
It really is this whole love and attraction thing. Uh, but have you ever really stopped to think why it happens like that? Sometimes, even before you properly know the person.
Yeah, that initial draw, that spark,
Hmm.
it feels almost instinctual, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But people, thinkers, they've been trying to get a handle on it for ages.
Which actually is the perfect lead-in for our deep dive today. We're going back a bit to the 19th century
Okay.
and looking at the really insightful ideas of the French writer Stendhal. He came up with this compassionate theory of love, he called it.
Stendhal, right? On love.
Exactly. And honestly, the more you look into it, the more it seems to click with how things feel even now.
What's so interesting about Stendhal, I think, is that he wasn't just seeing love as, a passing feeling.
Hmm.
He saw it as a real psychological journey, a process even, something that totally shifts how you perceive, well, everything, the person, the world. And it's driven by this very human need for meaning, for beauty.
Totally. So our mission today really is to unpack that journey, to try and make sense of the psychology behind attraction, how we actually fall in love, but in a way that feels, accessible.
Grounded.
Yeah, grounded, like getting some maybe surprising insights without needing a philosophy degree.
Exactly. We can gently explore his main ideas, and I think you'll find his observations about where attraction starts.
They feel surprisingly, modern when you think about your own experiences.
Okay, let's do it. So get right in. So according to Stendhal, where does this whole story usually kick off? It's not like a sudden thunderbolt, is it? That instant fiery passion.
No, not usually. He was quite perceptive on this. He said love typically starts much more quietly,
How so?
with simple admiration. It's not this huge, overwhelming infatuation right off the bat.
That makes sense. It's like maybe you notice someone being really kind.
Right.
Or you hear the passion in their voice talking about something they love. Or maybe it's just a kind of quiet confidence they have, that little thought of, there's something genuinely interesting there.
Exactly that. Admiration is basically spotting a quality in someone that resonates with you personally.
Okay.
Could be intellect, humor, their confidence, maybe even a bit of vulnerability you glimpse. It's that first flicker where you think, I'd like to know more about them.
And there's a sort of gentleness to that stage, isn't there? You're just observing, appreciating, maybe from a little distance, a curiosity, but not like heavy emotional stuff yet.
Absolutely. It's uncertain, tentative. You're drawn to something, but you wouldn't necessarily call it love yet.
Right.
And Stendhal points out something important here. Everyone can admire, and everyone can be admired. Attraction, really, in its earliest form, it starts when we let ourselves really see other people, and maybe just as importantly, let ourselves be seen too. Okay, so admiration is the seed, that quiet starting point. How does that little spark then grow into that, intense feeling, the being in love feeling? This is where his idea of crystallization comes in, right? Sounds quite poetic.
It's a fantastic concept, really evocative. Crystallization for Stendhal is like the psychological magic trick,
Okay.
the mental alchemy, if you like, that turns that initial admiration into love. And like you said, it's not logical, not step by step.
Yeah.
It's driven entirely by our imagination.
Okay, imagination. Let's unpack that. What's our mind actually doing during this crystallization?
Well, Stendhal thought our minds start to focus really intensely, almost obsessively sometimes, on the person we admire. And we start to build them up in our heads, idealize them. He uses this amazing analogy. Imagine a bare tree branch left in the salt mines near Salzburg.
Okay.
Over time, the water evaporates, and the branch gets covered in these incredible sparkling salt crystals. Dazzling.
Wow, okay. That's a vivid image. So our minds are like the salt mine, and we're covering the person we admire with glitter, with these perfect qualities.
Pretty much. We project our own stuff onto them, our desires, our ideas of what's beautiful or perfect. So in a way, we fall for who we believe they are, which is shaped by our own inner world as much as who they objectively are.
Right.
We kind of amplify their good points, maybe ignore the less good ones for a bit, and they just seem radiant in our eyes.
So it's not like we're trying to fool ourselves necessarily. It's more that our deep human longing for connection, for beauty, it actively shapes how we see this person.
Exactly. Stendhal doesn't frame it as foolishness or delusion. He sees it as deeply human. It reflects our yearning for beauty, for meaning, for connection. We're seeing a reflection of our own hopes. Think about modern dating apps, right?
Yeah.
How often do you build up a whole picture, maybe even feelings, based on a profile.
Right.
A few pictures, some text.
Oh, totally. You're crystallizing an image before you even meet properly.
Exactly. It's a modern form of the same process.
That really clicks. Okay, so we've got admiration leading to this mental crystallization. Then Stendhal breaks down the unfolding of love into 4 specific emotional stages. Let's walk through those. First is admiration, which we've touched on, but maybe with a bit more detail.
Yes. Stage 1, admiration. It's really about that basic recognition, seeing something genuinely special in the other person.
Like we said, kindness, how they speak, passion.
Exactly. Could be anything that strikes you as admirable. But the key thing here is there's no obsession yet.
Right.
It's more objective. You might just think, wow, I respect how they handle that,
Yeah.
or they have a great way with words. No personal stake yet.
Got it. Clear recognition, no hook. Then stage 2, acknowledgement. What changes here?
In acknowledgement, a definite desire for, well, closeness starts to bubble up.
Okay.
You start thinking maybe they admire something about me too. You start imagining things, sharing moments, connecting more deeply, wondering what it might be like if they, chose you, noticed you back.
Yeah.
This is where the first real hint of wanting something more creeps in. You might start subtly, looking for chances to interact.
That little internal voice going, maybe? Could they? Like me too. And then comes stage 3, hope. Sounds like the emotional temperature is rising.
Definitely. In the hope stage, the feelings get deeper. That little maybe starts feeling more like a real possibility.
Okay.
You start believing, yeah, I think they might actually like me. And tiny things fuel this, a quick smile, a shared joke. Maybe they remember something small you said.
Those little signs feel huge then.
Monumental.
Yeah.
And your inner world gets busy. Daydreams, thinking about the future, this gentle but persistent longing for them. You might find yourself, replaying conversations, looking for clues.
Oh, yeah, the mental replays. Been there. Okay, and finally, stage 4, delight. This sounds like peak Stendhal love.
It really is. Delight is when just thinking about the person brings you pure joy. That initial admiration has fully bloomed into adoration. Simple things they do become sources of pleasure. Things that might seem like flaws to others, you see them as charming quirks.
Endearing.
Exactly. Their presence, even the thought of them, makes you feel more alive, inspired. You're just happy loving them. It's like they color your whole world differently.
Everything connected to them gets this special glow. So Stendhal's whole theory really highlights how much our own minds are, actively constructing this experience through projection and idealization.
Absolutely. The attraction isn't just about the other person's objective qualities. It's hugely influenced by how we see them, how we interpret them through our own lens. Our minds aren't passive observers here.
And it's not totally random who we project onto, is it? The source mentioned reasons why we fall for certain people. It seems tied to our own stuff.
Very much so. We might be drawn to someone who seems to embody an ideal we hold about love or beauty or strength.
Or someone who just makes us feel seen.
Yes. Seen, understood, heard. That's huge. Or sometimes it's subconscious. They might remind us of someone important from our past. Maybe a parent or an early love.
Interesting.
Or maybe they have qualities we admire and wish we had more of ourselves. Courage, creativity, whatever it is.
So they kind of awaken something in us.
Exactly. Hope, joy, vitality. Attraction is this really complex mix of who we are, our history, our experiences, and what we aspire to. It's all woven together.
But, okay, this crystallization, it sounds beautiful, but it feels like there's a potential downside too, right? If you're mostly loving this idealized image.
That's a really important point, yes. The risk is definitely there.
Oh, so?
Because we are idealizing, we might, unconsciously ignore red flags. Or we build up expectations that no real person could ever meet. And that's often where the trouble starts, isn't it? The beginning of heartbreak. When the reality of the person starts clashing with that beautiful crystallized image we built.
It's like those shiny salt crystals start to dissolve. And you see the plain branch underneath, maybe with some knots or rough spots you didn't notice.
Precisely. A perfect metaphor. But, interestingly, Stendhal didn't just see this as negative. He saw the potential for pain as part of love's beauty, strangely enough.
Wow.
He believed that to really love, you have to risk. You have to have faith, engage your imagination, believe in something potentially wonderful. So the act of crystallization, even if it leads to disappointment later, it reveals something amazing about us, our capacity to feel so deeply, our hope, our ability to believe.
So is he saying all love is just an illusion then, a beautiful trick our minds play?
Not exactly. He argued that love starts with projection, with that idealization.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to stay there. He believed love can mature, deepen into something much more real, more substantial.
How does that happen?
The turning point is when we start moving past that initial shiny image, when we begin to see the person truly flaws, vulnerabilities, quirks, everything alongside their strengths.
And you still feel something positive.
Yes, that's when admiration hopefully grows into real affection, respect, maybe even devotion.
Right.
The real test, as the source suggests, is can you still find joy, respect, beauty in the actual person once the crystals melt and reality fully sets in?
Okay.
If the answer is yes, then love has a chance to become authentic, to endure.
This whole way of looking at it feels quite compassionate, actually, especially
Yeah.
thinking about times when love hasn't worked out. It kind of removes that feeling of, oh, I was so foolish for feeling strongly about someone who wasn't quite who I thought.
It really does. Stendhal's perspective encourages a lot more kindness, I think, toward ourselves and others in matters of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
He stresses that loving deeply is brave. It requires you to be vulnerable, and vulnerability always carries the risk of getting hurt, of rejection.
True.
So if you've gone through unrequited love or a tough breakup, his framework says, you aren't silly. You are actually engaging in this incredibly powerful human process of crystallization and hope. It's part of the deal.
So taking all this on board, how can we use these ideas? How can they help us navigate attraction and relationships in our own lives?
Well, there are a few practical things, I think. First, maybe you try to be a bit more mindful of that idealization tendency in ourselves.
Okay.
Ask yourself now and then, am I really seeing this person? Or am I mostly interacting with the shiny version I've built in my head?
That's a good check-in.
Second, validate your feelings. Even if they aren't returned, your emotions are real and matter. Don't dismiss them. Third, maybe consciously allow love to develop over time. Try not to rush from that first admiration straight to intense attachment.
Let it breathe a bit.
Exactly. Also, be kind to yourself if you do get hurt. See heartbreak not as failure, but as proof you can love deeply. And finally, maybe prioritize clarity over fantasy, especially as time goes on. Once that initial glow fades a bit, pay attention to who the person really is, through their actions, their words. Does the real person feel right for you?
That's really solid practical advice, grounding the romance a bit, maybe. And the source also mentions something profound, that love is a form of self-discovery.
Yes, I love that part. It's a key takeaway from Stendhal. Love acts like a mirror, in a way.
How so?
When we fall for someone, it doesn't just tell us about them. It tells us a lot about ourselves. What moves us? What do we truly long for? What's our capacity for tenderness, for passion? Even if the love isn't returned, the experience itself can be meaningful. It shows you your own values, your ability to feel deeply. The whole experience, loving someone, lets us see beauty, even if initially that beauty is mostly in our own imagination.
So Stendhal's view, it's way more than just biology or finding a convenient partner. It's about imagination, longing, something deeper. The soul, almost.
Absolutely. He saw the psychology of attraction as less science, more art. An art form our minds practice, turning the everyday into something extraordinary, something deeply meaningful.
And whether it works out in the conventional sense or not, the act of loving itself, letting ourselves be drawn in, it changes us, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
It teaches us to see beauty, to hope, maybe to be more generous with our feelings.
Precisely. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. When you feel yourself starting to fall for someone, that initial pull, take a moment. Consider not just what you're seeing in them, but what that attraction, that specific set of admired qualities might be revealing about you, about your own heart, your desires, your own journey.
Because in the end, love isn't just about the other person.
It's also profoundly about who you become in the process. The beautiful, sometimes messy, always human process of loving them.